Greetings, back on the channel. It's been a while. I've been very busy with work. I did do this lesson, props practice, a while back. I think I struggled halfway through, couldn't get something working, so gave up. But now I'm going to have another go at it. I had forgot a lot of the prop stuff that I've learned, so I've been re-watching some of the vids, hence the delay in getting this out. So what time is it? 5 to 12, 5 to midnight. This is how dedicated I am. Check this view out, not that view. That's the one we want. And as I said, we are going through the Scrimba lesson, learn React props practice. So let's get cracking.
Well, it's been a minute since we've started a new React app totally from scratch. So one last time, I promise the last time I'm going to make you do this, I want you to set up a React app completely from scratch. I guess as a reminder, Scrimba is doing a little bit of magic for us. When we pull in these dependencies, it's setting up our React app basically for us. But I just mean in the coding part, I want you to get a little more practice on doing that from scratch. You can read through the challenge for the specifics on what you're supposed to do. There's also some extra credit down here that would be worth looking into if you're interested and if you were able to do this top part all by yourself. And although I would like you to include your own favorite jokes and maybe share it on Twitter or in Discord, I did include some jokes for you to use just in case you didn't have any jokes on hand that you knew of. So pause the screencast and work on this challenge.
Right. Hopefully I'll be a bit quicker this time. Right, one last time. Set up React app from scratch. Okay. Some music in the background. Very depressing silence, isn't it? Get this out of the way. Right. So first off, import React library. React. Import the React DOM. First bit done. Right, this wants us to render an app component. Okay. So first off, React.dom render. Let's render the component app, which we've not created yet. It's going to go into document AirBandB root. Have I missed something off? Does that need? Yeah, does it need a comma? Yeah. Right, we're going to create a new file called, a new component called app. App component. Are we importing that? Yeah, okay, separate file. Try the import first. So, no, let's do it in order. So, app.js. Okay, I need to import that component in here. Import from now. On my last bit of code I was doing on here, I did this. I wrote app.js, thinking stupidly that you have to put the full file name in, but you don't, and it causes errors. That's all you need. Right, so let's test this is working. Let's create the app file. App.js. Let's export this app. Export default. So that's sending it out into the wide world. function app. I'm just going to return bollocks. Yes, I've created a load of bollocks. Okay, render an app component. Done. App should be in its own file. Done. App should render a joke component, 45 joke components, joke component defined in its own file too. Each joke should receive a setup prop and a punchline prop. And render those however you like. Right. Joke component should be defined in its own file. Okay. Yes. Copy all this stuff in again. In fact, we need to sign it. So where are we now? We're in app, aren't we? I was going to need that. So this is the joke component. Need to export this into the app component. Export. Function joke. Good at this now, aren't I? He says. That everything? I think so. Right, so we need to import the joke component into the app. Right. So that's the joke component defined. Just let's just see if it works. Let's just call it in there. Let's put the props in a minute. So jokes, let's import the joke from there. So it should print I'm a joke. Yep. Cooking with gas, right. That's all set up. The app should render 4 joke components. Each joke should receive a setup prop and a punchline prop. Right. So we need to take in these props here. Now we're going to lay out these jokes, set up a punchline, okay. So I guess we need a P for the setup and a P for the punchline. So that'll be in the joke component. So let's wrap it all in a div. Need to have a parent. Got a joke. Last name. don't technically need this, but let's live life on the edge, eh? Right, autocomplete moaner. Sorry, code moaning. If you close your divs for me, you wouldn't be complaining. Right, so I'm putting our joke component together now. So there was one called setup, wasn't there? Let's call that setup. Let's use a bit of BEM. Is it that? Joke setup. Let's have that bolded. Scratch my nose then, didn't pick it. Got an itch. Pick me a winner. Right, this is going to be the punchline. Let's take that off strong. Usually just separate them. Around the punchline. Right, this should print that. Yep. Coolio. Do I want that margin? No, I don't. Looks like it's separated. If you can inline styles in JSX. But you can't. No. What have I done wrong? The style prop expects a mapping from style properties to values, not a string. For example, style equals margin. Ah, right, okay. Mean that? No. I don't want a string, does it not? Let me gain one. Just reading what it says in that console error log there. Look. Nope. Oh, bollocks, this doesn't matter. Balls to the brewery. We've got any CSS to play with? Yes, we have. Let's do it properly then. So I'm going to target that. Target that class and remove. So there's a margin, default margin input on this P tag, I think. And get rid of that mother. In fact, I could just do this, couldn't I? No, I won't do that. I was going to do a global remove. But the CSS ain't linked, is it? This is, why has that not worked? What dev tools in there? Nope. Why have you not worked? That should work. Padding, is it? Not picking it up at all, is it? Well, yeah, I bet that's got margin above it. If you watch this. All CSS this really, not React. Mark my words, this will work. Moving the margin from the top. Annoying. That doesn't work. There we go. Well, let's leave it in bed actually. Let's just stand out a bit. Should we go crazy and make it bigger? I'll take the red off, don't want it. Right, good enough. Right, that's the joke component working. Let's set it up with these props. So there's the props objects that we're bringing in. We'll set that to set up. I haven't actually set the props up yet. I'm just calling them here. I have to use the same names. Can't be arsed writing punchlines, so I'll just put punch, 4 extra characters in it. And this will break now, yep. So I need to set these props here. So the first one was set up there. Second one, punchline. So these are the two properties that I'm going to pass into that component. Let me hold up, I've got one. What's brown and sticky? Stick. Hey! Hilarious, eh? Right, app should render 4 to 5 joke components. Right. Let's do 4. I hate it when it does that. So annoying. How does it do that? Different there. That's why. So. Hopefully this audio is coming through. I've got my tunes on in the background. Maybe I'll just about to hear it. Let's copy that. Why is it moaning? So this prop stuff, completely forgotten it. But I rewatched all the props videos from lesson 6, understanding the props concept, all the way through to destructuring props. A lot of destructuring props is a lot of bollocks. I don't know why I bothered with that. By that I mean you can destructure these properties, you call them all in there, and then reference them. Just set up, but it makes it more complicated. Digressing. Right, where were we? Calling for instances. Calling, is that the right word? Rendering, sorry. Yeah, I'm rendering for joke components. And each render I'm changing the props. Properties. Right, another joke. Let's make one up. Why did the chicken cross the road? For some foul. Note the spelling of foul. What jokes do I know? Don't know many. I'm a big joke person. Google crap jokes. Oh, I've got one. I actually knew. Horse goes into a bar. And the barman says, "Why the long face?" What did the constipated mathematician do? He worked out with a pencil. That's quite a good one. How about one? What's orange and sounds like a parrot? Carrot. Right, anyway. So I'm rendering the joke component 4 times. Each time passing in different properties, so we should have 4 jokes. Oh no. Adjacent JS wrapped in and closed and tag. Okay. Doesn't like that, does it? So needs to have a parent wrapper. Bang a div around it all. Shall I be ultra anal? And that console's too high, isn't it? Let's get rid of it. This font a bit bigger. Sorry, should have made that bigger on the outset. Oh well. Right. I think I've done the challenge. There we go. There's my app. Rendering the joke component there 4 times. Each time plus in That's setting up the props for the component. This takes them in via parameter, which is props object, the jokes object, and that's the setup. That's the Kewl, K-E-W-L. I've done anything else. I don't need to do anything else. Extra credit, some jokes are only a punchline with no setup. Okay. In fact, yeah, that horse one's technically a punchline with no setup. The horse one, that one, let's get rid of it. So it's dealt with it there. If you don't pass in a question prop, how might you make it only show the punchline? Well, it's done that. What's it mean if you don't pass in a question prop? Rint one. Does it mean setup? There. I think you mean setup, Bob. Schoolboy error. So that's technically that's a punchline. Half an hour. It's hard to. You don't pass in a setup prop, how might you make it only show the punchline? Or like that.
Many, many years traveling the world and producing, and it's great to have him.
Well, it's only showing the punchline. Don't know what it means there. What do you mean, Bob? Let's ask him. I've done it anyway. Go me.
Since we've done this a number of times, I am going to move through this fairly quickly. So I'm going to import React from React and import React DOM from React-DOM. We're going to use React DOM to render an app component, which I haven't yet created, but I will in just a second. And we'll render to that div with the ID of root. I'll also import an app component, which isn't yet created, so I will create a new file called app.js. Inside of app.js, again, I'll import React from React. Anytime we need JSX in our code, then I'm going to import React. And I will export my component. For now, I'll just do a quick sanity check. We'll do an H1. That says hi.
Sanity check.
You might notice too, I included some basic styling. I changed the font just to switch things up a little bit. Okay, and then it says to have the app component render 4 or 5 joke components. So I will kind of work backwards. We'll have this return a div that surrounds our 5 joke components. And those don't exist, so first I need to import them from a file called joke. And then I need to actually create that file. So in joke.js, again, import React from React, export default our joke component. Okay, we'll have this return a little sanity check H1 for us. Joke here. save. Okay, our 5 joke components are being rendered correctly and showing up on the screen. Now, if you did struggle at any point in just this part of the setup, I really recommend that you just go back, spend the additional time you need to revisit what we've talked about so far. Everything here should not be confusing at this point in the course, and if it is, it's okay. You just probably should go back and...
So exactly what I did. I read my mind, Bob. Yeah, just go back and rewatch previous videos if you don't remember. Good advice.
Revisit some of the stuff that we've learned already. Okay, now comes the practice for actually using our props. We know that we need a setup prop, and I actually copied these already, so I'm just going to paste.
How's he doing that?
Multiple
cursors
for these jokes. And then we have a punchline. Now I can tell that my punchline is going to make each of these a little bit too long. So while I'm here, I'm going to put these on their own lines. Okay, and then I have all the punchlines copied as well. Now, think for a second. I haven't hit save yet. Think for a second. What is going to change, if anything, on my screen here?
Nothing.
If you said nothing's going to change, then you're right. And that's because I am passing props in, but my component is not making use of them at all. So let's do that. I'm going to receive the props. Just for giggles, let's take a look at what console logs want to...
Just for giggles. I think you'll find the phrase is just for shits and giggles. Can't really say that on a professional code learning application though, can you? I can say it on here.
Console log these props. We see we get 5 instances of the props object. So really quick question, if I typed console log 1 time, how come I'm getting 5 console logs? Well, just like any function, whenever I run it, it will run this console log. And in our case, because we have 5 instances of a joke component, it's running this joke function 5 times. Now, because props is an object, I can access the setup and the punchline through dot syntax. I can say props.setup and props.punchline. Let's make this not an h1, but a div. And I don't know, let's make these h3s maybe. And I'll separate each one with a little horizontal rule. Now, here's another check for you. If you weren't able to get to this point, I want you to think now, how am I going to actually make my setup and my punchline display on the screen? In fact, you can pause here and actually make that happen.
No thanks, already done it.
Well, I can't just say props.setup because, of course, that will make it
curly bracket
the text props.setup on the screen. To insert our JavaScript value inside of my JSX, I just need to wrap it in curly braces. I'll do the same thing here. We'll say props.punchline. And make sure I spell that right. And let's hit save. And awesome, we get everything showing up. Now, one thing I just thought of, I might want to change this to something like a paragraph just to change the borders between these two and give it a little bit of contrast between the setup and the punchline. And I think that that hits all of the points from our original challenge here. Go ahead and delete this. Now we come to the extra credit, and if you were able to complete this extra credit, then you're pretty far ahead, because we haven't yet taught things like conditional rendering. But I did think that I would just give you a little sneak peek on it. So here's an example of one of my favorite jokes that's just a one-liner here. Over in app.js, I'm going to create another instance of a joke, and I'll put it at the top so we can see it more readily. Now, in this case, there really isn't a setup for this one, it's just a punchline. So what's going to happen if I just include a punchline? Well, we can see that I really don't have anything being rendered up above here. However, if we did go into the DevTools, we would see that up above this paragraph, there's actually an empty H3 sitting up here. Honestly, it's not that big of a deal the way we currently have things set up. But what if I went to my joke and instead of just putting the setup and the punchline, I said something like setup, colon, and punchline, colon. Now when I hit refresh, we can see that, well, it's a little bit broken here. Again, this isn't something that we've taught, so I didn't necessarily expect you to fully grasp this concept quite yet, but as an advanced sneak peek into conditional rendering, something that I can do is actually only render this H3 if props.setup exists. One really concise way that we're going to learn about is to surround my JSX in curly braces, which means that I'm putting it inside of a JavaScript interpretation, and then I can say props.setup and this H3. We're going to learn about how a lot of the neat little tricks that we can do with React are just using vanilla JavaScript principles, and this is a good example of that. This is saying that if props.setup is a truthy value, then render the thing on the right side of my AND operator here. If it's a falsy value, however, it won't render anything at all. So I can hit save and it will look very similar to the way that it looked before. Again, we're going to talk more in depth about that. It doesn't need to make perfect sense quite yet. And one of the cool things about this is we could decide to do it in another way. For example, what if instead of conditionally rendering it this way, I decided to say, well, the style of this H3 is that it has a display of none when props.setup does not exist. Well, I could do that with something like a ternary. I could say the display, if props.setup does exist, then I want it to be block. but otherwise I want it to be none. Obviously, this is a much more convoluted way than what we just saw, but it essentially accomplishes the same thing. The point is, we can use those props and vanilla JavaScript principles like a ternary operator or this more concise AND operator to accomplish our goals. I'm hoping this was a helpful practice. I'm really looking forward to seeing people's best jokes, and when you're ready, there's still one more little thing we're going to learn about props before we can finally take all of this and apply it to our section project.
Next up, passing in non-string props. Go on then, let's do it.
Okay, I'm sorry that we're still here on the jokes, but I realize there's one more thing we need to cover before we jump back into our section project, and that is how can we pass a prop that is not just a string? The concept of props, like we talked about, is very similar to the concept of attributes in HTML, and with HTML we always pass in a string as our data type here. However, we are not limited by that in React. So far, we've only done strings. However, because this is JavaScript, it's React, which is JavaScript, we can pass in any JavaScript data type to our components as props. So I want you to think critically here. How might you pass in a prop that wasn't a string data type? Let's say, for example, you want a number passed to each one of these jokes that eventually will represent the number of upvotes and downvotes for this joke. Or maybe you want to pass in an array of comment objects. And then you might say, I want to allow people to filter out the puns or only show the puns in my jokes. In which case, I might pass a prop called isPun, which is the value true or false, not the string true or false, but the actual Boolean value true or false. Accomplishing this uses something that you've already learned at this point. And so I want you to try and think critically. See if you can figure out how you would pass in a non-string value as the prop to your component. And be curious with it, play with it. Actually give it a try, don't just think about it. Pause here and see if you can figure that out.
Okay. Oh God. Let's put music on. How would you pass in a prop that wasn't a string data type? Or non-string data type? Say what do you want to be? Upvotes and downvotes. Okay, so let's pass in upvotes. So you don't want to put a string that will pass a string in, so I can just like that, 5, no, didn't like that, did it? No. So it's a prop with an array of comments and a boolean, whether it's pun. How would you pass in a prop that wasn't a string data type? Like that. Not moaned about that, has it? Let's see if it accepts it. I'll be amazed if this works. No, it does. Yeah, look, you see, upvotes 5. Oh, bugger me. Right, so that's how you bring in numbers. an array. Same thing, I reckon. Up votes, down votes. There's a number. Let's put down votes as well. That's going here. Half 12. But then now tell me if I work it now. Obviously, no one's going to dislike my joke. Some twat probably has, so let's put 1. Right. So it's a prop with an array of comments. So comments. So to set up an array, it's just basically set up an array of strings. This joke was shite. Comma. Funniest joke ever. Why is it not liking that? Should not need them. No, that's not going to work, is it? Why is this array not liking that? Let's put that H5 anyway. Well, I've worked out how to do numbers. I've not worked out how to do comments. Sorry, an array. String array. About a boolean. Is pun. Will that work? Yeah, looks like. Let's render that. Let's put that in H6. Is this a pun? Didn't like that, did it? Oh, I don't know, Bob. Just fucking. Why not just tell us? Just guessing, aren't I? What's the point of this? Tell me.
We learned previously that we can jump back and forth between JavaScript and JSX by using curly braces, and the same thing works with our props. For example, these 3 jokes here are all puns. So if I wanted to indicate that, I could say isPun equals, and then jump into JavaScript and send in a Boolean value like true. And then I can do the same thing for these others, and then of course for the ones that are not puns, I can change this to the JavaScript value, Boolean value of false. And then do the same thing for my jokes up here up top. Actually, I'm struggling now to think if this joke is a pun or not. This might be a pun, because it's talking about puns. Anyway, you get the point. By introducing these curly brackets, I can put any JavaScript value in here. So again, if I wanted to pass in a number, I could say upvotes is 10, downvotes is 2. And if I had an array of comments, I could say comments equals, and then this can get as complicated as I want. I can say an array of objects, and maybe those objects have an author property, and it's got some author ID, and then the body of the comment itself, and then maybe there's even a title to the comment and whatnot. Of course, it's an array, so it could be multiples of those and so forth. I can even put JavaScript expressions in here to determine what the value being passed into the props should be. That's getting a little bit more advanced than I want to jump into now, but the point is these curly braces essentially give us free reign to throw any JavaScript we want inside of the curly braces, and whatever that JavaScript expression resolves to is the value that the prop will pass down to our component. So let me fix my syntax error here and go over to my joke component, and let's just console log props.isPun, and you'll see we get a bunch of Boolean values. I could even do props.comments.title, and actually that's going to cause an error because I didn't pass a comments prop to all of them, but let's do props.comments, and we'll see we get a bunch of undefineds, but one of them has an array of objects. So I think you get the point. That's going to help us as we go back to our AirBandB experiences clone. So that's what we're finally going to jump back into now.
You know, I was just looking at the title up there, AirBandB clone. That's nothing to do with AirBandB, is it? Right, I think we're done. That was props practice and passing in non-string props into components. Yeah, it's all good. Next up, we've got passing props to the card component back in the AirBandB app that we're building. Stay tuned for the next exciting installment. I bet you can hardly wait. See you in a bit.